Hello, today I want to talk to you about a principle of shoe design that you can use to design beautiful shoes every single time, even if you don't know how to draw or sketch. Now, shoe design is about proportions, and for some of us, eyeballing the accurate proportions is a very long thing, even if you have beautiful reference materials like this beautiful shoe by Carmenia. The principle I'm talking about is the principle of quarters, which basically is an observation that I have made that most of the major parts of the shoe are basically 1/4 of the actual last length. If that's something that you want to find out more about, like and subscribe to the channel and stick around to the end. Now let's get it cracking. So the major parts are 1/4 of the last length. So what is the last length? Well, we measure it like this. On this last, you can see that it came to 35 cm. So last length is 35 cm. Next thing that we're going to do on our journey to designing our reference shoe, which is an Adelaide Oxford, Adelaide or Adelaide. Next thing we're going to do is to find the center line. So basically just draw masking tape on a flat surface, eyeball the center of this your last. It's easy if you turn it to yourself, turn it away from yourself, turn it towards yourself. That way you can see that your marks are centralized. And then with the line that you drew on the masking tape previously, you just connect the dots and you get your center line both in front and at the back. So that's the center line. Next thing, we're going to place this last on a flat surface, tangential to a flat surface, and mark the sides of the last where the front part touches the flat surface. Those two parts on the inside and the outside of the last are known as the balls of this last. The balls on the inside and the ball on the outside. So we'll use our tape rule, our flexible tape, and connect those 2 points. And then draw a line from the ball on the inside to the ball on the outside. And this line is known as the vamp line. The point, of course, where that line intersects with the center line is known as the vamp point. Of course, that was the center line in front right there. So we've gotten our center line in front and at the back. We've gotten our balls. We found our last length to be 35 cm, and then the intersection was the vamp point. Right now, we're going to do some divisions. We said most of the major parts are going to be 1/4. We're not going to be dividing by 4 alone. We'll divide by 4, 5, and 8. I'll tell you why. Now, the last length divided by 5, whatever figure you get, you mark it from the bottom of the last at the back on the center line going upwards. So last length divided by 5 will give you the point. The first point there is called the counterpoint, which is your last length divided by 5. You add 1 cm to that mark, and you get another point called your back height. Remember, the first mark we made was the counterpoint. Then this vamp line on the outside part of the last, we will divide it into 2. So we measure it, it came to about 9 cm. Dividing it into 2 will give us 4.5 cm or thereabouts. We'll mark the division. Then we'll join the counterpoint to that subdivision of the vamp line on the right side. See how I'm holding the tape? That way it's easy to have it secure so that you can draw the line you intend to draw. This line that we just drew, and by the way, is called the quarter line. Next, we will measure that quarter line and divide it into 2. So we take a measurement of the quarter line. It came to about 20 cm on this last. So we'll divide that into 2 and mark that middle point there, 10 cm on the quarter line. Now, this is our vamp point right here. If we take 1/4 of our last length, 1/4 of 35 is about 8.75 cm. So we mark 8.75 cm on the center line going upward from the vamp point. Now that point we marked is called the instep. So if we draw a line from that instep to the middle of the quarter line, we have a line that I choose to call the tongue line, which is actually one half of our top line. The top line is a line that runs from the back height. Remember the back height 1 cm away from the counterpoint. So you draw a line going to the same place where the quarter line starts, but terminating at the point where it intersects with the tongue line that we drew earlier on. Now if you curve the angle that it makes like so, you see that you have your top line in full. Your top line is actually the opening of the shoe where the legs slot into. You see this angle that the tongue line also makes with the center line in front. The way you curved that top line there, you can also curve that part in. And this way we have the facing of the shoe. The facing is the part close to the front of your feet where the eyelets, the lace holes, commence. So we've gotten our top line, which is the back height running from the back and where it joins the tongue line in front. And then we've also gotten our facing. Now let's move to those major parts of the shoe, which we said are 1/4 of the last length. The first is your toe cap. The toe cap, I'm basically going to use 1/4 of the last length, which is 8.75 cm, measured along the center line from the tip. So you mark that there, and then if we draw a right angle from that point going downwards like so, we basically have our toe cap. I like to curve the toe cap forward a little bit, so if I place my tape rule like so, I can shift it about 1 cm inside going downwards. So that's the first one. Now let's finish off the facing of this Adelaide Oxford. Remember that the top part of the facing we've already gotten by curving the tongue line into the center line. Now the down part of the facing, I typically like to start about 1 cm away from the van point. So what do? I draw a right angle 1 cm away from that van point. I just draw a right angle from there and use that as reference for finishing off my facing. So the right angle. Now I have finished constructing the facing, but let me show you exactly what I did. If you measure the distance between here and the downward width of the facing, you find that it is half of 1/4 of our last length. That's about 4.3. 1/4 of our last length is about 8.75 thereabouts. If I start the curve of this rear part of the facing from about 0.5 cm beneath that line and curve it upward from that 4.35 mark or thereabouts, I can use that to complete the rest of the facing. So you find that the facing itself, ultimately, the length of it ultimately falls just a bit, half a cm short of 1/4 of the last length, while the total width of the facing is exactly 1/4 of the last length. So that basically complies with the rule of quarters. And if you take a look at many shoes, you would find your cap toe or your toe cap, whichever you want to call it, will be about 1/4 of the last length. The length of your facing will just fall short of 1/4 of the last length, and then the width also of the things that lie across the last will also be about 1/4 of the last length. So that keeps everything in proportion. Nothing looks too big and nothing looks too small, you see. So that is how you can, that is a formula that I'm suggesting to you in designing any type of shoe. It is just so much so that I'm designing an Adelaide Oxford in this case. If you are designing a loafers, you can also deploy that same rule. Right now I'm going ahead to construct a mean form that I will use in other designs that I plan to make. In the next video, really, we will make a loafers using the mean form that we got from this video. I have explained how to make mean forms in several videos that I have already on the channel. You just place the outline of the one part of the shoe on top of the other and then find the middle between them. So that's what I'm going to do. This video is not to explain to you what a mean form is. You see that I will find the average between the two of them, and that will use that for the rest of my construction. So, but like I was saying, this video was aimed at showing you a formula, a principle that you can use in designing different types of shoes. I'm only creating this mean form so that I can have a mean form for this last, and I will use it in subsequent designs that I'm going to make. So if you don't know how mean forms are made or what they are for, check out the video at the top right hand corner. I will also link it in the description. I'll basically transfer the design that we had from our design that we did on the last. I'll basically transfer it onto this mean form and design the rest of the patterns of this shoe from that design. I probably will stop talking at this point so that you can observe and see how the rest of the pattern pieces of this last got done. So in the meantime, at any point where I feel that I need to come in and do some explanations, I would also interject and explain things further. So like I said, basically I'm going to transfer that design that we had onto my mean form, which is what you have here. So I'm transferring this design onto the mean form. Now you can either use an awl, or if you have access to a roller tracer, you can also use that. I'm basically attaching tape to the back of my design so that it doesn't shift while I am tracing in the design. So I'll use this roller tracer and trace in the different pattern lines onto the mean form, and then I will thereafter commence cutting out all of my pattern pieces. So you guys sit back and watch how the rest of it is done. Remember that I said in the next class we are going to delve into how to use the same principle of quarters, the same rule of quarters in designing different types of shoes. So we are starting off with an Adelaide Oxford. We will do the same thing for maybe a loafers in the next video, and then we'll probably try out the rule of quarters in a derby, so that you find that it's a universal rule that you can deploy for any type of shoe. So right now I've just marked in the eyelets on the facing, and I'll go ahead and cut out the different parts of the pattern. So stick around, ladies and gentlemen, and observe how it is done. I've not finished this shoe yet. I just wanted to shoot a video of how the pattern was constructed so that you guys can share it with me and learn a thing or two on how I deploy my process and the rule of quarters. Next thing I will do is to add in the lasting allowance, and then I'll go ahead and cut in the tracing channels so that I can use those in duplicating the various parts of this pattern. So just sit back and watch how all of that is done. Next step after here will be to duplicate, of course, the various pattern pieces. So you just fold a piece of paper into halves, place the particular pattern piece that you want to duplicate, go ahead and mark in the lines using your tracing channels, and then you have a representation of the pattern piece that you want to duplicate. So this is our toe cap. We will cut it out and unfold it to show that it has been duplicated. I typically add my brogue hole designs after I cut out the various pattern pieces. There's no point doing all of that work representing it in the pattern design on the last. All of that I think is cosmetic. The real work gets done when you create the pattern pieces. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm marking in, I'm basically using 1.2 cm so that half of it where the brogue holes will lie will be 60 mm, I guess. And then punch in the holes equidistant from each other, and then the brogue holes are adequately represented. Now let's duplicate the other piece. As you can see, because the where it starts is so close to the van point, the curve is not very protracted. So we can skip having to do any springing and just estimate that curve to be a straight line, and we will be absolutely fine. So just to duplicate it as well, we'll put it on the straight line, use the tracing channels to mark in the design lines, marking all of the design lines. Now on this particular piece, we would have to add stitching allowances in front where the toe cap will join. We would also add folding allowance at the top line. So that's the folding allowance on top there. First of all, let us cut out. So that's the folding allowance there on top, and then the stitching allowance is in front as well. So let's add tracing channels right here so that we would have a channel with which we can trace onto our leather when we are ultimately marking it out on leather. So also cut tracing channels at the top here so that we can trace out the lines that would be representative of the top line, so that we can be able to mark that part onto leather as well. Now I want to add brogue holes along these parts. So as you can see, I added all of that, and then also added a tracing channel with which I can mark in stitching lines, design stitching lines really, to be able to stitch those lines that lie beneath the brogue holes. So this is what this looks like after we have added all of the broguing designs. This is it with the toe cap. What remains is the tongue and the facing. So let's do the facing. So ladies and gentlemen, you guys basically see that everything is coming out nicely. The whole point that I wanted to convey to you is that using that rule of quarters. So this is the facing. When you unfold it, when you unfold the duplicates, you would find that its ultimate width, at least at the base, is approximately a quarter of the last length, and its ultimate length, lengthwise, that's longitudinally, is also 1/4 of the last length. Same with the toe cap, and all of those are universal really across all the different types of classic shoes that you would find. So this is our facing. You notice that on both sides I have added stitching allowances, and there we have it. So this is where I represented it on leather. I'll go ahead and cut out all of my leather pieces, skive, stitch, and then in the next video we will try to show how this can be deployed in other types of shoes like loafers shoes. This video is already way too long. I would like to stop it here, but before I go, I would like to say you try it out on your own and let me know what your observations are. But until I see you guys next time, God bless you. Peace.